G'day guys, Alex here and welcome to episode 173 of the Trademate Sports Betting Podcast. For today, we are doing a betting preview of season 2023 of the NRL, and joining me to do so is Pro Sports Bettor and Draft Stars live final champion of 2022, Chris Ryan. How are you, mate?
Cheers, thanks, Alex. I'm very good. Looking forward to the season. Only a few weeks away now. Let's get into it.
Yeah, mate, very keen. Just so people know, you are a pro sports bettor and you do specialise in betting the NRL. We do have an episode of you, mate. I probably should have written down exactly what episode it was. It was probably about 100 episodes ago. It was quite a while ago.
I think it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, about 2 years ago. Sounds about right. So, for those who are interested in hearing more about Chris's background and how maybe more so like the ins and outs of how he approaches his NRL betting or rugby league betting, jump on and check that out. It's definitely worth a listen, mate. But we are going to go through each team as quickly as possible. Otherwise, we'll be here all day talking about the 17 teams now that we have. We'll go from worst to best based on the market here. I might have a few teams out of order just slightly, but you guys will get the general gist of it. So we'll go through each team and share our thoughts on each of the teams. Maybe Chris will give a few insights into the fantasy kind of markets, DFS kind of stuff for anyone interested in that. And then at the end, we'll get into some bets that we like in the outright market, mate. Let's kick things off. The worst rated team in the market, the mighty Dolphins. Welcome to the NRL.
Yeah, welcome to the NRL. I think this might set back expansion of the NRL a few years, considering how bad the recruitment has gone in their first year. I think they're about 150s in the market. I quite legitimately have them rated 1,000 to 1. I think if you're looking to back the Dolphins at 150 to 1, you're throwing your money away. I'd rather just give you my PayPal account and send it that way instead, because you won't be getting any returns on the Dolphins to win the comp. Well known that the recruitment has been a disaster. They've got no big names. They've got a lot of problems. They've got no try scorers. They had their forward pack. I'm not sure that any forward in the team has ever had a 10 try season. I'm not sure any back in their team has had a 15 try season. So I really think they're going to struggle to score points. They've got a halves of Anthony Milford, who's kind of on his way out of the NRL. Isaiah Katoa, who's only just coming into the NRL, yet to play an NRL game. And Sean O'Sullivan, who was probably the most, in my opinion, the most improved player in the comp last year at Penrith, coming off a low base before that. But he was playing halfback with the best team in the comp, with the greatest players around him. Now he's going to have to shoulder the load with a lot of veterans. He could revert back to his previous form. I think they're really going to struggle to score points this year, the Dolphins. They've got the Wayne Bennett factor, but that's not going to be enough. A bottom three team for sure. If we're looking from a fantasy standpoint, if you're looking to play NRL fantasy, Supercoach, season-long fantasy, if you're into daily fantasy on Draft Stars, there's opportunities here. Because we've got so many veterans or no names, there is some players who do have to step up and will play bigger roles than they would at other clubs. So I liked Tom Gilbert, who came across from the Cowboys, and potentially Ray Stone, who came from Parramatta. Neither of them big name players, but could have big work rates, could be 80-minute players. They could get a lot out of them. They could be players who score more fantasy points than anybody really realises. And I'd probably be avoiding a lot of the old forwards in there. They got a bunch of the ones from the Storm, Bromwich, Felice Kafusi, Jared Wallace, Mark Nichols. They're all guys tail end of their careers. Not much improvement in them, so I'd be steering clear of them.
Yeah, well said, mate. I think if Wayne Bennett wasn't the coach, maybe you'd be like almost locking them in for the wooden spoon. But like
Sure.
he is able to galvanise the side, and I get the feeling that you put Wayne Bennett and mix him in with some experienced heads. I feel like they could grind out some real ugly, gritty wins, maybe only score like 15, 20 points, that kind of margin, and just beat some poor sides at home, that kind of stuff, and potentially overcome some of the worst sides that we're about to mention. But yeah, luckily, I think just having Wayne there, I know he's not the most amazing coach, but I think having, at least he'll be able to motivate them and get them to perform at their best a decent amount of the time, which should only be. Mate, watching them go around the other day was pretty grim. Yeah, watching Milford was just like he looks bigger than ever. Like I'm just like, mate, at least come in like some decent shape, ready to rumble. But it looks like he's still on holiday, basically.
It's been in a good paddock.
Yeah,
because it's been so well known how bad their recruitment has been. The price for the spoon at $2.60, it's really screwed down. So there's no value in it. Everybody knows that there's no value in necessarily backing them for the spoon.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right, mate, we'll move on to the New Zealand Warriors. Yeah, I would say, in my opinion, I think it's between them and the Dolphins for the worst squad. Just on paper, they look pretty grim, and the new coach they've got there, not really too much known about him. So, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat. Not much I like about this team at all. They've got a whole lot of interchangeable, no-name backs. Their recruitment was predominantly a bunch of bench players and fringe first graders from other teams. So they've got about 5 or 6 new players, but not one of them's a star. And most of them were really coming off the bench at other teams. So how much can that really improve them? Sean Johnson, I hate to say this because honestly, one of my favourite players ever to watch, Sean Johnson, brilliant footballer, but he's coming to the end of his career. He doesn't have the pace and perhaps even the desire to burn players like he once could and just light it up and win a game off his own bat. They'll get a little bit of a kick out of being back at New Zealand full time. They should start off with some pretty big crowds, I imagine, and they'll eke out some wins at home. I'd probably be surprised if they won any more than 1 or 2 games in Australia. I had them rated 7s for the spoon, and they're 8, so smidge of value.
Yeah, no, that sounds. The only thing that I had them, slightly back, like just a little bit better than the Dolphins, was the fact they're back at home, and surely that's gonna, rejuvenate them and get them some wins. But it's a pretty ugly looking squad. Just do you want to have a quick note on the coach, mate? Are you high on him at all, or are you just What do you? It's one of the weirdest appointments of all time. I feel like.
Yeah, probably one of the least fanfare for an incoming coach, isn't there, Webster? I mean, a coach often from someone sitting at home watching the TV can be hard to rate them, and particularly a new coach. Like, how do I really factor that in to my ratings when there's very little's known about him? So I probably don't really pay too much attention. I'll just leave it as a neutral rating until any more information comes from watching the games to change that.
Okay, mate, good stuff. We'll move on to the Dragons, who, I mean, on paper they're not as bad as what their price says, but it just feels like they just feel like an absolute basket case at the moment. It almost seems like they want Griffin to go ASAP, and they're not going to play for it. I mean, the only reason why I didn't back them for the spoon was I thought potentially Griffin could get sacked very early, and that could rejuvenate the squad. They could really lift the morale. I have no idea. What do you reckon?
Yeah, Griffin's got to be the favourite to be the first coach sacked, because Bennett, you're not about to be sacked first year. Webster, first year, he's not about to get sacked. Griffin's been close to being sacked before at the Dragons, been sacked at other clubs. To me, this team is absolute hot garbage. I haven't rated as short as 475 for the spoon. So this is my bet for the spoon. The Dragons, around about 750, they're available at a couple of places. They've lost already Talatau and Moan, the no-fault stand-down, I think. They've lost Cody Ramsey, so that they're starting 1 and 6 are both gone. Tyrell Sloan is going to be the fullback, who Anthony Griffin doesn't like. He dropped in quite early in the year last year and then barely played him after that. Beyond Ben Hunt, I can't see a decent player in this team. Ben Hunt was fantastic last year. He just dragged them. He was the only reason they won any games. I've always been a big fan of a Ben Hunt, bit of a, I think, unfairly maligned player, but he's top shelf quality. The gap from Ben Hunt to their next best player in the squad is enormous. I don't even know who the next best player is. No,
I hear lots of people talking up
bottom 3.
Yeah, I hear lots of people talking up their centres, but it's like Lomax has never really put many games together of, absolute brilliance, and Sully's hit and miss too. I mean, I'm trying to remember exactly who's in their forward pack, but I feel like their forward pack's not horrendous, but
they've got a bunch of the guys who've been around a while. Blake Laurie, potentially Aaron Woods, maybe even starting. Fumiano, Jaden Sewer, Jack DeBellin's still decent. Still struggle at hooker with maybe Jacob Liddell or Moses Mbai. No, I don't find a lot of fire and brimstone players. Not a lot of high energy players in this Dragons team. And I think this team will cop some 40 and 50 point hidings. They're a team who will give up the ghost once they start falling behind. I don't see the fight in a lot of their players. Zach Lomax's really talented. Probably not a lot of fight, not a lot of consistency to his game, but he has a lot of talent. I can see them getting pumped multiple times this year.
Yeah, all right. Sorry, Dragons fans. Knights, the Newcastle Knights. I think another team potentially is sacking early in the season here. It's probably between, Griffin and Adam Elliott, and also what do you call? Bloody, I should know. Holbrook probably up there too for early sackings if they get off to a slow start. But Knights, Ponga. What do you think? Ponga takes some time to adapt potentially. Like, their spine on paper doesn't look too bad now. Like, it looks level above the other three we've mentioned, but potentially going to take some time to adapt here. You think?
It could do. I tend to think like star players can be star players wherever, and Kalen Ponga is a genuine star player. He's had concussion issues, which could be an issue playing more in the front line, playing at 6 rather than fullback. And how many games you're going to get out of Kalen Ponga for the year is a big question mark. I'm probably a little bit higher on the Knights than the rest of the market. They did add some decent players. None of them are stars, but they're upgrades on what they had. Lachlan Miller could go decent. Got some pace at fullback. Greg Marzu, meter eating winger. Even Tyson Gamble as a backup, probably not even starting the season, but once Kalen Ponga cops a concussion, he'll probably come in, and he's a decent player. Hopefully a full year out of Jaden Brayley at 9, and some injury issues have been a problem for him over the last few years. $6 for the top 8. I think that's worth a bet. I have them at $4.80. Like, I don't love the team, but just a small upgrades, incremental upgrades across the squad, I think gives them a chance. And Newcastle's a team that it's a big if they get on a run, they'll have 30,000 at their home games every week. The town is rabid for the Knights. They could become very hard to beat at Newcastle if they got on a little bit of a run, because they'd pack the place out every single week. I think there's some upside in Newcastle. There's a couple of players I mentioned. I think Greg Marzu and Lachlan Miller are fantasy relevant players early in the year, DFS sort of players. Marzu racked up a lot of meters, could be scoring some tries. Lachlan Miller could be one of those sort of fullbacks who breaks out and makes a lot of tackle breaks with his speed. If you can follow Kalen Ponga around the park, there's opportunities for him. I think Jackson Hastings next to Ponga at 7 makes sense.
Yeah.
Don't like him at all for fantasy. Not really a fantasy player because he's a bit more of a game manager. But he's a guy who's got some heart. He can lead them around. And he doesn't give up like some other ones can. So I think there's some upside in Newcastle. Don't get too excited, but some upside. Yeah. I don't have them anywhere near those bottom 3 teams like perhaps the market does.
Yeah, I do understand what you mean. Like, if their spine hits their straps, like, they are a decent chance at making the 8. It's just, how long does Ponga take to be a star at 6? Because I would assume eventually he will be, if he sticks it out.
That's right.
And Hastings is solid. Brayley's brilliant. Like, if he stays fit, and Lockie Miller's not that's his first Lockie Miller. Am I going to miss
Lockie Miller.
Yeah, Lockie Miller. He's he's someone that could hit his straps too and be very good. So that's fair enough, mate. Let's move on to the West Tigers, mate. Lots of changes this year. You've got Sheens coming in as coach. Some big signings too. Api Coruscant, Bateman, Papali'i also. So it looks like they got the spoon last year. You'd be very surprised if they got the spoon this year. But do you think it's kind of enough for them to be sniffing at the 8 this year?
The Tigers are probably the team that I'd be highest on. I think they can jump go from 16th all the way up to edge of the 8, somewhere 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, that sort of region. They picked up such high-quality players. Api Coruscant, he took over from Damien Cook as the New South Wales number 9 last year, 2 premierships at the Panthers. He's such a high-end player. Isaiah Papali'i, he came from nowhere from New Zealand to the Parramatta the last 2 years. Absolute star. Upgraded with Clemmer at prop. Charlie Staines on a wing. John Bateman coming across back from England. Some of the reports were he hasn't played as well in England, but he was, he's fantastic at Canberra the year prior. I find it hard to believe that a team who gets that much quality, particularly in the forward pack, that they can't make a substantial jump. I actually got them rated as short as 310 to make the 8. Not really interested in to go all the way to winning the premiership, but I think they can nip at the heels and potentially make the 8. They shouldn't run last like last year. Unsure what to make about Tim Sheens.
That was going to be my big question.
Iconic coach. I think he won 4 premierships, but the last of those was 18 years ago. And in the interim since that, he's actually done a lot of losing.
Yeah.
And he's got the Benji Marshall, Robbie Farah assistant coaches. The Hello Trio from 2005 premiership. How much that really makes a difference, unsure. But the quality that they got, they should improve a lot. I'm a big fan of Adam Douey at the 6. Early in his career, they brought him across to play a bit of fullback. He's not a fullback. He's got a huge boot on him, put up some spiral bombs. I think they pulled the wrong rein in getting rid of Hastings and keeping Brooks at 7. That might have been a money issue. They can improve a lot. They've got huge depth in their outside backs. From a fantasy point of view, I wouldn't take any of them because they're all interchangeable and none of them's likely to stick. We've got Staines, Kapoa, Stafford Toa, Nofaluma, Naden, Mamolo, Tommy Talau. They've got 7 or 8 guys who are going to play wing and centre. So don't touch any of them because they'll probably get dropped and interchanged throughout the year. But I do like Dewey as a guy who could really, take that next step and accrue a lot of points this year.
Yeah, I like what you said about Sheens because I think people will see Tim Sheens as coach and be like, all right, they're 100% got a better coach than last year and Michael Maguire, but it's like he's I was looking at his record, what he achieved over in the UK, and it was pretty poor. He's basically done nothing since 2005. So you get a little bit, I don't know. I mean, obviously the drop off in terms of age of coaches to versus players is a lot less, but still you have to adapt with the times, and potentially Sheens could be a bit behind that 8 ball. It'll be. You never know. Benji might have quite a big influence too. We don't know anything about Benji as a coach, so it'll be a watch and learn. But definitely some great signings this year. I will say Bateman though. I'm pretty sure Bateman's not even in the country yet, so I don't even know if he'll start.
He hasn't played the trials yet, but I thought he was getting here soon.
Yeah,
I think Sheens said he was going to get here soon.
Yeah, so I'm sure he's training the house team back home, but something to look out. Mate, the mighty Titans. My biggest question here, as a Titans diehard, is they can score points. Everyone knows that, and I think with some of the inclusions this season, they potentially can score even more points. It's just the defense, and it was just diabolical last year. I'm not sure if it was the worst or the second worst, but they have made some improvements there. Brett White coming in as the defensive coach, who was at Canberra, but I'm not going to sit here and say that that's going to solve everything. Do you have any thoughts on the Titans, mate?
I haven't been a huge fan of Holbrook. I think he's coming into his 4th year at the Titans, and they've been a bottom defensive team, one of the bottom defensive teams each of those years. The bottom 8 and the bottom 4 defensively. They have had a fairly slow-moving defensive line. They've struggled to defend shifts, and that hasn't changed with the coach. So that's a big concern. They have a little bit of a roster overhaul. I like Sam Verrills at 9. He's fast. He can provide some pace out of there, and 9 was an issue for them last year. They had Aaron Clark there. He's no good as a distributor, but he did turn out like he might be a decent a lock. He could be a player you could target in fantasy if he can start there, because he will go hard.
Yeah.
Kieran Foran at 6. I don't really like it for the Titans. Yeah, he's a good player, Kieran Foran. I think he would have been a better player moving at this stage of his career to a team who was maybe on the precipice of contending and to push them that little bit further. The Titans are just hoping to be respectable. Kieran Foran's older. I just don't think he's going to take. He's not going to get a quantum leap out of a team, which the Titans need. He's just going to have like an incremental increase. So I'm not a huge fan of that. The Titans are going into the season with Sexton and Boyd locked in a battle for the 7. It seems like Tanner Boyd's going to be the starting 7, but I think that's a red flag for your team when you're not 100% convinced on your halfback to start the year. Most teams know who their starting halfback is years in advance. That's the player you're locking up. So I would suggest we're going to see some chopping and changing. Boyd will be there. Sometimes they'll lose a few games. Toby Sexton will come in, and you'll lose a lot of continuity in your main playmaker, which I don't like. I don't like that at all. They lost Marzu, who Holbrook didn't seem to like him because he went in and out of the team, but he could score a try. He had a bit of upside that other players on the team didn't have. They got shot from the Bulldogs. I don't mind as a centre prospect. I was surprised the Dogs let him go. One of my big problem stands is that I really quite like Jaden Campbell. I think he's got real breakout potential, and Holbrook to me has pulled the wrong rein and said he's playing him off the bench. It makes no sense to me. I think he. I don't know how that's. I think he has the potential to be your best player. He looked that good in some limited stints last year. I know it's a bit of a tough decision. We got Brimson there; he's been captain, and he's also better suited to fullback than he is to 6. But I would 100% be playing Jaden Campbell. If you're playing season-long fantasy, I'd be picking up Jaden Campbell. 6 rounds in when Holbrook realises he's done the wrong thing. Nobody has Jaden Campbell in their team, and all of a sudden he becomes a starting fullback. So wait a little bit, and you can get him. And I think Sam Verrills and Aaron Clark have some upside to have some breakout seasons.
Yeah, I just don't know how Campbell off the bench is going to work, because where do you play him? Do you take Brimson off and play him at 1? I saw him come on at centre a few times in the trial, which is super weird. You can't really play him on the wing either. You can't really play him in the middle because he's so small. Like, he could just potentially get run over. So, I don't really understand how you play him as a 14 unless you're really chasing a game and need points and you're just throwing on all the attackers. I just don't know how it's going to work. But yeah, they do seem pretty. Boyd's kind of been. I thought that Foran would come in and just be the stick on 7, but it seems like he wants either Boyd or Sexton to play that role, which means that you kind of have to play Foran at 6. And yeah, I mean Brimson's quality, so I just don't see how unless. Brimson's not going to get dropped. I couldn't see from fullback. At the moment, I think Brimson's a better player at fullback than Campbell. So, yeah, it's tough to see. It's one of those weird things where you've got 2 of your best players who play the same position. It's kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, that is unfortunate because they lack quality in a lot of other positions. Yeah, they've got a couple of good fullbacks.
Yeah, I mean overall, though, I will say Boyd has looked like. He's looked improved, I think, from what I've seen before in the trials. So hopefully for myself that continues to go along. But yeah, it's a little bit of a worry considering Boyd's not really had a great NRL career so far. But hopefully he can kick on. And I like what you said about Verrills and Clark. I think they could be very good players on their day. So we'll see what happens with the Titans. The Canterbury Bulldogs, mate. Another team, lots of changes once again, most importantly the coach. Everyone seems to be drooling over Cameron Ciraldo, mate, but he's essentially, like some of these other rookie coaches like your Fitzgibbons last year. Probably people were saying similar things about Adam O'Brien. I feel like it can really go one of 2 ways. Do you have any opinions on Cameron Ciraldo? Because if he's not as good as everyone says he is, then we could be looking at Dogs getting reasonably close to the spoon. I'm not saying they are going to get the spoon, but they could be a lot worse than people project them to be.
Yeah, again with Ciraldo, same as Webster, I would just rate him as a neutral. Because as you said, when Adam O'Brien came into the comp, well, he's the next big thing. He was Trent Robinson's assistant coach. We talk about each of these assistant coaches. They come from the Melbourne system or the Roosters or now Penrith. Well, they're the next big thing. But, being a really good assistant doesn't necessarily carry over to being a really good head coach, particularly when you tend to be starting from a lower end team. You're not starting as a Penrith or Roosters coach. You're starting from one of the lower teams. So no idea how good or bad Cameron Ciraldo will be.
Yeah, okay. And but overall thoughts, mate. I mean, Reid Marnie's come in, Kickow. Overall, you would say their squad's improved.
Definitely improved. Yeah, they're sort of almost going on a 2-3 year timeline of improvement because they brought in a bunch of players last year. Addo Carr, Burton. This year we get Kickow and Reid Marnie, and next year Stephen Crichton is coming. So they're going to incrementally get better. I think they've probably got a wide range of outcomes, the Dogs. It doesn't surprise me if they finish bottom 4, even despite those improvements. But I love watching Billy Kickow play. He's great on both sides of the ball. Probably doesn't get the raps as he should as a defender. He really gets up and hits blokes. His line speed's great. He'll hurt a player. They'll be down for a set. Trying to recover from Kickow hitting them in the ribs. So much improved. Reid Marnie's a high quality player. They got Matt Burton. They got Addo Carr. So there's some points in them. Definitely they can make the 8, but I don't have them any there for around even money or something to make the 8. I don't have anything like that. So I'd much rather be backing them to miss the 8 because they do have holes in the side. We've got Kyle Flanagan at 7, and I think there's fair agreement that he's not going to be the answer. They've got a couple of rookies in the outside backs. Their back rowers are pretty thin. So that's why I can't really be rating them as a top 8 team just yet. But they do have upside. They could be the team that you get wrong and could all of a sudden be top 4 because the other players are making such an impact and Cameron Ciraldo gets them to defend. They could be a team who does make a big jump. Fantasy point of view, Canterbury's going to go left all year. We've got Burton on the left, Kickow left, Addo Carr left. I think they'll be like a left-hand sided team like Souths are. We know Alex Johnson scores a million tries down the left because Cody Walker just feeds him all game. I think Canterbury's got that. Pick Canterbury players on the left and ignore their right-hand side because they ain't going that way.
Yeah, well said. I mean, I'm not sure who's going to play left centre for them, but I would assume like an Alamotti or trying to think of Burns.
Yeah, so that rookie, Alamotti, Burns, Kiraz.
That'll be a cheap price, you would think. Someone whoever's playing left centre.
They'll be cheap, but they won't be seeing much ball.
Yeah. I mean, whoever's going to be on the left side.
Oh, sorry, on the left side. Yeah, they'll get cut out though.
Yeah,
they'll be playing decoy so Kickow or Addo Carr can score.
Yeah, no, well said, mate. But
much like South Sydney. Yeah, let South Sydney go left all game. The left centre doesn't score much. It's Cody Walker or Alex Johnson who was scoring the tries or Latrell. The centre's playing decoy. Yeah,
no, well said, mate. But yeah, I agree. They could be a side, probably maybe a little bit similar to the Sharks of last year. Maybe not the same kind of upside, but like if Ciraldo's a complete whiz, then then they could go very well. Another team with a new coach, mate, Manly Sea Eagles. Sorry, I'm just trying to find their odds here. There we go. My first question is very simple. Is Seabold good? Because he's been terrible at one club and, one season at the Rabbits where he was very good. I think he got them 3rd or something like that, maybe to a prelim final from memory. So is Seabold good?
No idea. Yeah, at South, he was almost the architect of them starting to go left all the time with Walker and Alex Johnson. Looks great. Was terrible at the Broncos, but the year that he was at the Broncos, they had a lot of suspension and injuries, so he could be better. He could be better than what that says. Not really a big fan of though. This is his 3rd club, hasn't won anything. I'm not really a big fan of recycled coaches who didn't win. So I'll probably have him a bit worse than the average. Seabold.
Okay, and Schuster coming into 6. Any opinions on that? I assume, that could be the swing in terms of whether they make the 8 or not, and also the big one, Tommy Turbo, if he can stay fit or not.
Yeah, Schuster's got a lot of talent, but he's probably one of those players who just always looks like he's got a lot of talent and never like fully reaches that level. You know, he'll have good games here and there, but won't have the consistency because he will throw some speculator passes, which look great when they hit, and then when they don't, it's like, come on, mate, that's not the right play. But he'll certainly have some good games there. They're a team, Manly, who's stacked with their best players. You know, Cherry Evans, Trbojevic, and then a real big fall off. So they've got super elite players there, and you know the whole season almost relies on Tom Trbojevic's hamstrings. So they're a team with a big range of outcomes because if Trbojevic stays fit the whole year, they have top 4 upside because he's that good. And Cherry Evans, you know, he's that good at helping everybody else, and he's always healthy. But if Tom Trbojevic gets injured in the first round or early on, does a hamstring, they could be down there with New Zealand and the Dragons and the Dolphins because the rest of the team is not really that good. We've got a whole bunch of interchangeable props: Sifley, Alloa, Kepi, a few other ones that have all been there for a while. None of them play much more than 45 minutes a game. None of them are big impact players. Struggling a little bit through the back row. Not much on the bench. Tautai Kula, the centre, big raps on him last year. They're talking him up as one of the fastest players in the whole comp. Didn't really score many tries despite that speed. So he could be a player this year who has some upside. You could back him in some first try scoring because he wouldn't be screwed down in the market because he didn't get a whole heap last year. But with that speed, he could be a breakout sort of potential player this year. But big range of outcomes, but not overly excited for Manly's consistency over the year.
Yeah, I thought their right edge could turn into quite a dangerous edge if they get firing. Olakau'atu, that's how you pronounce it. Yeah, and Kula. If they hit their straps, I can't remember who's the right winger. Is it Saab or Garrick?
I think he's Garrick on the left. Saab's out, I think, for the early part of the year, so it might be Christian Tuipulotu.
Right. Okay.
Below average.
But yeah, that could turn into quite a dangerous edge, especially if you got TT in behind them and he's fit and firing. So another team. I think big swing. I've got the Raiders down, who we'll talk about here next, as a huge. They're the one team I cannot get a read on at all. They are the most inconsistent side. I've consistently lost money on them every time I bet on them the last 2 years because I always bet on them when they have a shocker. And I always fade them when they seem to be back in form. I just have no read on them at all, mate. So you're going to have to help me out here.
I'm probably the opposite here on Canberra because they have a really stable squad. They lost Adam Elliott, and that's like basically the only player who was in their starting 17 at the end of last year who's gone. Didn't really bring anyone in. I think they remain what they were last year. A team that sits there between 7th and 11th. I think they're much more narrower band because it's such a stable team. I don't imagine too many changes throughout the year. They're not a particularly old team, so I wouldn't expect them to fall off the map. Their back half of last year was really good. They played quite well at the back end of last year. They lacked really any real superstars, apart from maybe Jack White, and Hudson Young was great last year, but they do lack that real elite level player to take them top 4 premiership. So I think they remain in that sort of 7th to 11th sort of band. I really like Xavier Savage, the fullback. Got a whole heap of pace. I'm not sure that Ricky Stewart really trusts him. He could be a breakout player. He's fun to watch. If Ricky will trust him and give him some greater responsibility. But I think they've got a narrower range of outcomes because it's such a stable squad. I think they're fairly known identities. We know what Ricky Stewart is. He likes to complain to the media. Doesn't win much.
And
also not terrible.
But yeah, Savage is out for the first, I think, 6 to 8 weeks, or maybe I'm thinking of another player. He's out for at least a couple of weeks at the start of the season, and I don't know who they're going with at 9. Do we have any confirmed? Is it Levi or Wolford or I don't know?
I don't know. Probably starting with Wolford and then mixing him in with Tom Starling.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, they could be. You just never know. I mean, Papali'i, he's only getting older, so it's hard to see him being anywhere close to what he's used to being. Tapani's obviously
Yeah.
amazing if he continues.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's
right.
like, yeah, there's I just really struggle. I think it's Ricky. I just don't really see him as the Ricky Stewart of old, and I think he's the kind of coach where once the players fall out of favor with him, it could really go bad. But it kind of is like kind of happened recently. It's kind of not. Like they recovered pretty well at the end of last year. So I'm very confused as to what to make of them. But we'll move on. Brisbane Broncos, mate. Walsh coming in, which is huge. I think. I think they got. I guess their biggest issue is probably around the hooker position. No one really knows who's going to play, and the options aren't even that great anyway. Potential to be an amazing forward pack if they all get going. But then there's also just I don't know if you want to call it drama, but there's just so much weird shit going on with Kevin Walters. So you know what I mean? Like they're like players are coming out and saying he can't coach, but he's a good bloke.
That's bad.
It's like, what is going on?
Yep. Yeah, Brisbane's a pretty stable squad. We'll see a fairly similar squad team to last year, bar Reece Walsh. That's the big in. I think Reece Walsh has potential to be a top 3 player in the game. At some point, he could win. He could win Player of the Year, but he's got a lot of errors in his game. Lots of dumb passes, drops the ball, runs over the sideline. He's got to cut down on the error rate to make that leap. If he does, he'll be great. And he's great to watch. But the error rate for him is really high, and he needs to pull that down. But a stack of potential, lots of try scorers in the outside backs with Walsh, Corey Oates, Katoni Staggs, Selwyn Cobbo on the other wing. So young players, speedy, powerful try scorers. If Ezra Mam and Reynolds can harness that, they could be a fun team to watch. They could score a lot of points. Guns in the forward pack in Payne Haas, Patrick Carrigan. Stick with Patrick Carrigan with your fantasy. He's going to be a great player all year long. Such a high work rate. Young. He's not about to go backwards anytime soon. They certainly have top 8 potential. Kevin Walters is a concern. It is bad that the players actually bagging out your own coach. He has had a desire to chop and change his players quite a lot in his couple of years there. Like he hasn't kept continuity in the team one week to the next. Look at the team list each week. Each week he's dropping players coming in. I'd like to see him pick and stick a little bit more. If he did that, then I would see some more potential. But they're one of the teams who will be 5th to 10th chance for the 8.
Yeah, I agree. And it'd be interesting to see how good the Broncos would be if they had we don't really know much about Kevin Walters, but let's just say he's kind of like an average coach. If they had a very good coach come in, it'd be interesting to see how far they could go because they have the bones to maybe their spine isn't elite, but like outside of that, they've got plenty of potential all around the park. Do you have any opinions on the hooker, mate? I've heard Moses been playing really well in the trials and stuff. Like potentially that if Walters or Pakes aren't killing it, that potentially he could come in and solve a lot of their issues. Do you have any opinions there?
That's a tricky one because his starting hooker is his son. So how much does he want to change him, even if he isn't the best? I don't mind Billy Walters provide some speed out of dummy half. In previous years, Walters has liked to change his halves a lot around. Like last year before, he had like 6 or 7 halves, 5 and 8s. He changed around. This year, it might be the hooker position because they might have up to 4 hookers. They have 4 hookers in their squad, so he might like changing that around. He did last year, have Billy Walters start in one game and the next game he did put him off the bench. So I guess he's okay with taking his son out of the team. I wouldn't say I have any real take on which one they're going to go. I haven't really seen Mozza play. Tyson Smoothie, probably not. But I imagine they'll chop and change it, which is again not great from the guy who's touching the ball the most in your team. Yeah,
it seems like on the surface they've got like 4 below NRL, not below NRL standard, but below NRL average hooker, I would say. And could you just get rid of like 3 of them and just get one really good one?
That's right. That's right.
We'll see how they go, mate. I think this is your team, mate. The Parramatta Eels. They are.
Yeah,
coming off the heartbreaking loss last year in the grand final, but they did pretty well to get there. I think, and I think you think the same, that just to eliminate any bias on your side, I do also think that the Eels are being underrated by the market here. It's a bit of a weird one for me. I kind of see them getting better potentially. What do you think?
Yeah, Parramatta is probably the team that's lost the most quality out of their team, out of all the 17 teams. You know, they've lost Papali'i, Niokore, Marnie. That's 3 starters they've lost. And they're going to be thin, certainly to start the year, in the back row. Madison out because he didn't want to play a fine. Sean Lane's now done his jaw, so he's going to be out for a while. But Papali'i is obviously at West now, so they're going to start with a whole new back row. But the flip side to that is, they've kept Moses, they've kept Dylan Brown, they've kept Gutherson, like their core players are still there. Marnie, Paulo, Campbell, Gillard, still there. The ones who play the big minutes, the big roles in the team, they're captains. As you said, the grand final last year. You don't normally see a massive regression from a grand finalist, even a beaten grand finalist. It usually does give you the confidence to stay up there. Losing Reid Marnie is an issue with we got Josh Hodgson instead this year. Obviously, Josh Hodgson has been a great player in the past. He's reached higher highs than Reid Marnie has. But you would imagine at this point in their careers, that's a little bit of a downgrade to Hodgson, and also coming off an ACL at 34. So that could be an issue. But other than that, it's a reasonably settled squad, bar the back row. I imagine that they finish in that 3 to 6 sort of range. I had them rated 14s. I think there's some 18s out there on Betfair. I think they are backable. Certainly concerned with the amount of losses in them, but just talking price here, I think there's enough value to back them. Could start very slow. They have a very hard start, missing the back rowers. They play, I think, the Roosters twice, Cronulla, Penrith, and Melbourne in 5 of their first 6 games. So they're playing like the top 4 teams in their first 6, and short back rowers. So they might even get out to a better price after 6 rounds. They might be 30s. And then get players back, and then they might start coming in again.
Well, what are your thoughts on the bench? Because I was looking at potential spots for the bench, especially if Maddo and Lane are going to miss the first few games of the season. Do you have any worries there? Because it looks like a pretty inexperienced bench.
Yeah, it's going to be a pretty thin bench. Everyone probably knows that Jake Arthur's probably going to be on the bench. Which on merits probably shouldn't be there. And missing those back rowers. Now we've got the likes of Hopgood, Murchie, Dory starting, whereas they would have normally have probably been off the bench. So they're going to be thin. Campbell, Gillard, and Paulo tend to play above average minute props, so they're going to play more minutes than most props. Will go up in the 50 minutes. Sometimes Campbell Gillard goes 55 minutes. So the backup props won't have to play as long. Makatoa. But yes, so they are a little thin in the bench.
Yeah, and I think their outside backs have got a few injuries too at the start of the season. So maybe, like you said, could be a good team to back a couple of rounds in or a bit later.
Yeah, they might be best weighted. Yeah, they could be best weighted on.
Yeah. All right, mate. We'll move on to the big surprise packets from last season, North Queensland Cowboys. I find this team really hard to see how they go, just because, like, basically all of their players played their career best season last year. So it's like, are they all of a sudden, all those players, like top NRL players now, or did they just, like, out of nowhere just have an amazing season?
Yeah, that's right. Last year they were around 14th or 15th in the betting at the start of the year. So last year they were the big improver. If we were doing this thing last year, I would have said go nowhere near the Cowboys, can't win it, don't like them. And I think this is maybe a good lesson in how you need to be malleable with your betting, and you need to be willing to change opinions. Started last year, I hated the Cowboys, didn't want anything to do with them. And then about either the second or third round into the season, I was watching the defense, and they changed their defensive structure. Their line speed was so much improved from previous years. And then I just completely changed my rating on them. From having them 15th, I pushed them up to like 3rd or 4th after only like 2 or 3 weeks. So, and then I started betting the Cowboys a lot early in the season. and ended up making a lot of money back in the Cowboys before the market had adjusted, despite the fact 3 weeks earlier I hated them. I didn't want anything to do with them. But it's just an exercise in how you need to be able to be willing to change. You don't just stick to what your opinion is at the start. Like I've said, I hate St. George, but if all of a sudden they look like world beaters after a couple of rounds, then maybe I'll change my opinion on them. But you're right about a lot of their players having career best seasons. I think someone like Jeremiah Nanai, from a fantasy perspective, I'd be going nowhere near him. He scored talented, really talented. He scored so many tries off kicks last year as a back rower. It's not really a repeatable way of getting stats. It's not like he's Alex Johnson and he's got Cody Walker just passing in the ball all game, and we can predict that that's going to happen and he can keep up that level of production. I don't imagine Nanai is going to be able to score whatever he scored, 16 or 17 tries last year as a back rower catching bombs. It's so hard to repeat. And there was a few other players, you mentioned coming off career years. Other ones, like say Ruben Cotter, who's just a high work rate, high energy player. He can keep up that level of production, and he can maintain being a really high end player. In general, like Todd Payton certainly improved them. I think he is a good coach. I would, in a youngish career, I would have him as an above average coach, particularly from what I saw on the defensive side. And I think, often the coach can have more of an impact on defense. I like to see a team that gets up off the line and really works as a unit in defense. Other teams don't do that. The Cowboys really did, and that can be repeatable. Whether they have enough improvement in them is, how they're going to play that much better. And they actually have a bit of an older squad. Felt, Hiku, Townsend, Tano, Granville, McLean. They've got a bunch of players in their top 17 who are over 30. So they do have the potential to sort of fall off a cliff. But good coach, stable squad. I don't really imagine them missing the 8. Strong home ground advantage in Townsville. They'll still win plenty of games. I'm not looking to back them to win the comp. But a team in the third to 7th in that sort of region.
Yeah, I think you got that about right, mate. The Sharkies, the Cronulla Sharks, second year under Fitzgibbon. It's I guess kind of similar to the Cowboys. Maybe I'm a little bit higher maybe on the Sharks, just probably because they got a few more quality players in there, like high end kind of players. Nico Hines seems like he's taken his game. He just keeps improving and improving. The only reason I probably have them maybe a little lower than some of the top sides is the 1 and 6 Kennedy and Moylan seem like just a decent-ish level below, your Storms, Roosters, Panthers kind of.
Sure. The Sharks probably had the softest draw I've ever seen last year. Like, solid team, but good team, but maybe one of the worst teams I've ever seen who finished second. Hence why they went out in straight sets. They had the softest draw all year. All the good teams last year, they played them off Origin or when they had like 6 players injured, and they got to play like most of the bad teams twice. That said, they have the most stable team in the comp. Virtually lost no one out of their top 17. Tolman and Andrew Fafita retired, but they were only on the fringe of the top 17 anyway. So they're going to return the same team. When he comes second, return the same team. You're not old. You still got a team of youth. It's just hard to see you going backwards too far. And this one's going to sound a little bit strange, but Sharks $1.42 to make the top 8. People not really too excited about backing $1.42 shots, particularly not as futures. You've got to wait 7 months to get your money back. But if you were doing, people like a multi, you want to put it into someone to make the top 8 in the AFL, someone in the F1. I've got like 85% chance of making the 8. $1.42 is actually surprisingly big value on a team like this. They're just not going to go backwards. Not far enough to slide out of the 8. Fitzgibbon, second year in charge, they'll stay a competitive team. Step below the quality, as you mentioned, step below the quality of players of the Roosters, Storm, Penrith, but they'll remain a quality team.
Yeah, I agree with that, mate. I think they could be a team that I think they'll get better, but I think they could potentially finish like 4 places worse than last year, which is so weird to
definitely
say.
See that. Definitely see that, but they'll stay in the top 8.
Yeah, you would think so, mate. All right, South Sydney Rabbitohs. I mean, maybe this is probably the highest maybe I've ever been on the Rabbitohs in recent seasons going into. I mean,
Okay.
just because Latrell looked so amazing at the end of last year. Ilias' second year, but then you've got second year syndrome. I feel like a lot of it's probably down to if Ilias gets better and also if Cook can maybe just not hit the wall completely, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. He certainly dropped a cog last year and lost his starting job for New South Wales Origin. Cook didn't quite have as many scoots and the speed out of dummy half as we're used to. They're going to be the same. A bit of a broken record here over the last few teams: South, Canberra, Cronulla, Brisbane. Not many changes. They're going to play the same style. Everything's going to run through Cody Walker and Latrell Mitchell. Lachlan Ilias, I think, might be like one of the more nondescript number sevens in the comp. Like out of the spine, you got Latrell, Cody Walker, Damien Cook. He's the fourth wheel by a long way. Lachlan Ilias. Everything runs through Walker and Latrell and Cook. So whether he has maybe the opportunity to improve too much, I'm questionable about. I'm not super high on South, but I've got them rated 18s and then more like 13s in the market, 10. So I wouldn't be looking to back South because it's been the same team for quite a while. It's the same major players, and they haven't won, even though they've been to a few preliminary finals. I'm not sure that they're going to make that next big jump. Lachlan Ilias is probably a player I'd look to avoid in fantasy.
Okay.
His role's not huge. I'd stick with Cameron Murray. I think he's a phenomenal player, and I think he's even still got some improvement in him. As good as he is, I think he can still get better. And he's involved in everything, all facets of the game. Big work rate in defence, lots of meters, and then he's also involved. He scores tries from close range off short passes from Cook and Walker. Will pass the ball himself for try assists. He's just involved in everything. I love watching Cameron Murray play. Such heart. I'd stick with him. In any sort of fantasy format.
Yeah, it's a player you can often forget about because he doesn't have a 1, 6, 7, or 9 on his back.
Yeah, that's right.
You can have Lachlan Ilias and maybe a fading Damien Cook if you've got Cameron Murray fit and firing. So I think in terms of injury, wasn't he the biggest issue for them last year in terms of staying fit, the biggest impact on the side overall? Maybe similar to Latrell, but still
Yeah, that's right. Crazy. Yeah, I think he had a few games where he had a concussion, opening minutes of a game and missed nearly full game of a couple of games. But once Latrell came back in that last 8 to 10 weeks of the season, you're right, they were phenomenal once he was back in the team. So he's certainly a talisman for them, a bit like Tom Trbojevic, not quite to the same level, but similar. Yeah.
All right, mate. We're into the single figures here in terms of the last three. We'll kick things off with the Melbourne Storm. Big thing is probably Pappy or Pappenhausen. He's going to be out. He could be out for a long time. It doesn't sound the word does not sound good on him. It was almost like I heard 8 weeks, but I also heard he's coming back whenever he feels like it, kind of whenever he's actually right. You know what I mean? Because it's pretty significant injury. And I'd be also worried about them if their forward pack got a few injuries. They look pretty light on in terms of the squad and the forwards. But thoughts on the Storm? Even though if you put Pappenhausen back in the team, I think they've got the best spine in the comp, probably by a decent bit.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the best spine in the comp. Pappenhausen, Munster, Hughes. I'm a massive fan of Harry Grant. Yeah. That's a phenomenal team, and I think when you've got that spine and Craig Bellamy, you can win the comp regardless of the other players. That they become role players in your team. Craig Bellamy gets them to play the role while the other 4 do the heavy lifting. I have them closer to 6s in the market. There's some 850, even pushing 9s on Betfair, I think, at the moment. They might start slower. They could be like a Parramatta, as you said, Pappenhausen out. I think Justin Olam's out, so a little bit thinner in the outside backs to start the season. They could get to a bigger price because of the injuries they have to start the season. And they had a lot of injuries last year. We can forget how dominant Melbourne has been over the last 15 years after they sort of really fell away at the back end of last year with a lot of injuries. But you can't not be a high quality team with that sort of spine. I have Harry Grant as the best hooker in the comp. Cameron Munster, I would have him as the best 6 in the comp. And Jerome Hughes and Pappenhausen are probably third or fourth at their position in the comp. That's how good that team is. Obviously, they lost several of those forwards, Bromwich, Kafusi, but they were also getting to the tail end of their careers. They've got Tariq Sims, is probably a similar tail end of his career sort of player. Eli Katoa from the Warriors showed a lot of potential, never didn't capitalise on it at the Warriors, but showed some potential. So he's the sort of player you could see having a breakout under Craig Bellamy. Just get him to run off Munster and Hughes. He's a player who I could see having a Jeremiah Nanai type season and scoring 10+ tries in the back row. But I'm not signing the death warrant on the Melbourne Storm. Decade-long dominance just yet, and I think they're worth a play to win the comp. The spine's too good. They still got the best coach in the competition. Maybe they start slower, but if you're looking at betting for the comp, we want to find the best team at the end of the year, not the start of the year. So and they have that ceiling to be the best team at the end of the year.
Yeah, potentially a few-ish. I think if like a Welsh, Nelson Asafa Solomona, one of them went down, like kind of happened last year, that could be an issue. But because they're such, they're awesome props. Whereas, like, I don't know who else they would have backing them up, but I feel like it's quite a steep drop off if one of them went down.
Certainly is after Nelson Asafa Solomona, such a dominant player, a try-scoring prop, which is a rare thing to say. And he's like a bit like a kick out where he can really get out there and hurt you and have a player resting for a set because he's too big and he's just hammered you. But you're right, the depth isn't quite there like it has in previous years.
Yeah. All right,
from a betting angle, just a quick one on Xavier Coates. He played Origin, played for Brisbane. Honestly, one of the worst defensive wingers in the comp. Whoever he's marking that week, look to back them to score a try, because Xavier Coates is just constantly found out of position, slow to turn and chase. He'll score a bunch of tries himself, so nobody will notice how bad he is as a defender. But he's pretty poor, so you can back against his opposite number.
Yeah, all right, nice one. Sydney Roosters, mate. They are second favourites here. Probably, I would say the biggest swing for them will be if Brendan Smith is good enough. Like, I feel like if he fires, they'll probably win the premiership. If he doesn't, they probably won't. What do you think about that?
Yeah, love watching Brandon Smith play. Yeah, probably the highest energy player in the whole competition. Hooker of the year 2 years ago. More running meters than any other hooker there's going to be. I don't know if he has the best service out of dummy half for none, particularly as a hooker who actually won Hooker of the Year only 2 years ago. A lot of his attributes are his speed and darts out of dummy half. Absolute superstars packed in this back line. Tedesco, Joseph Manu is my favourite player to watch in the game. Does absolutely everything at an elite level, whether he's running, passing, following up, flick balls, steps, fends, everything. Everything is at an absolute peak level. I had him as like maybe the top 3 players of the competition last year. Loved to watch him play. Suiali, really started to pay dividends in the back half of last year, or the hype from when he was a 17-year-old when the Roosters were trying to sign him. He ain't going backwards. He can jump over a house. He's got some pogo sticks, those legs. They've got Suiali on the right wing and Tupou on the left wing. Expect a lot of bombs to wingers. And Sam Walker's a pretty accurate kicker. I imagine they're going to score plenty through that. My only concern on the Roosters is they've been at the top for quite a long period of time. A lot of the cause is the same. Tedesco, Manu, Keary, Wira, Hargraves. Just if you have quite the same desire, these guys have won premierships. You've been up there a long time. That's my only concern on them. I love Trent Robinson as a coach too. I would have him like the second best coach behind Bellamy. I have him a smidge behind Melbourne, but absolutely can win.
Yeah, I would say their desire is surely still there, just because the last 2 seasons have been well below par. I know the season before was riddled with injury, and then last season was it knocked out first round against the Rabbits? First round or second? First round, I think, of the finals. I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, I think so, you're right, yeah.
I think they'll be, I don't know. That just seems like well below par for what they'd expect. So, yeah, potentially be fired up again, mate. Last but not least, the Penrith Panthers, the reigning premiers, back to back. I guess biggest question for them, similar to the Roosters, what's going to go on with at hooker? Like, how big of an impact is that going to have? Like, how big a loss is Api Coruscant? And also, you add in Kikau into that too.
Yeah, certainly. But they still just remain the best team in the comp. They lost, the previous year they lost Matt Burton. It made no difference to them. This year they lost Kikau, lost Coruscant, high-end players. It doesn't actually have to make any difference. They can still remain the top team and the most dominant team. Their line speed is the best, bar none, in the comp, and that's typically led by Liam Martin, Mitch Kenny, and Fisher Harris. That those are the leaders of the pack, and the speed and the line speed and the power with which they hit in defence, and they're all still there. So, from a system point of view, that can all remain exactly the same. I have them at 375, so I even have them as a smidge of value at the top of the comp. They'll probably rotate a little bit there at hooker, but Mitch Kenny's a phenomenal defender. He doesn't have the attacking nous of Api Coruscant, but he's probably a better defender. But it's a downgrade. Obviously, Kikau's, you can't not lose Villa Kikau and not say you haven't dropped a cog. But you've got Dylan Edwards there. You've got Nathan Cleary pulling the strings. Liam Martin, Fisher Harris. I don't imagine they drop any more than third. I'd still tip them for first, but I don't imagine they drop any more than third, just because of the system is so good. And another thing with Penrith, they are winning everything in the juniors. 15, Harold Matts, SG Ball, under 20s, reserve grade. They were winning everything. So I imagine there's a couple of really good players in their team who are at the back end of their top 30, the guys who are 28, 29, 30 in the squad that we don't really know anything about. I'm tipping that they're going to be some good players. Just like last year, we had Talon May and Isaac Tago start the year, unknowns, and they were studs. They've got this huge nursery who's winning everything in juniors. They'll have some more players to come through and take those holes that Kikau and Marnie are leading.
Yeah, I know. Taylor May's out for the season, I'm pretty sure. But
he's out.
Is it Taruva? Taruva comes in probably.
Yeah, probably. Yeah,
and it's how much do they lose?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they had huge raps on him last year. He gave his little bite of first grade, a few games here and there. Played Fiji at the World Cup and looked very good.
Yeah,
so, probably comes in, steps in.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I know people were pretty down on their performance against St. Helens the other day. I guess that's probably maybe people overreacting a little bit, because it is like, if you're Ivan Cleary, you obviously want to win that game, but with the season around the corner, I'm not going to make sure that my team's in peak performance for a game versus St. Helens 2 weeks before the season starts. I probably don't even want them to be at peak performance for round one, if you know what I mean. So, they could be slow starters, just getting adjusted to the hooker situation and, missing Kikau too, and a few new players coming in. But yeah, I agree with you, mate. They're still just an unbelievable system. Yeah,
that's right.
For sure.
That's right.
You could add into that too, similar to what you said, the Roosters, though, that how much do they want it? It's been 2 years in a row. They kind of broke, because it's always been like the big thing, like, can you go back to back? It hadn't been done in a long time. So maybe they slack off a little bit now. Who knows? It doesn't seem like it. It seems like they really love their footy and having fun with it all. So,
yeah. They have the intensity. They have the players with the intensity with Martin and Fisher Harris in particular. That's why I don't necessarily see them not having that high-end desire, potentially, like the Roosters, because they have those players who just want to get up every single time off the defensive line and smack them. That's their style of play, and that's their structure. That's why I don't think I can't imagine them falling off the perch.
Yeah. All right, mate. Well, let's look at the betting markets now. We've gone through 17 teams. Well done, mate. You put in quite the shift there. We'll start with the winner, mate. You highlighted a few teams that you like, but I'll just get up the odds checker here. I know, unfortunately, for the Aussies watching, there's not many books here that you can use in Australia. But yeah, do you want to just go over which ones you're liking just for the outright winner market?
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, that doesn't matter too much what there's on the screen because most bookmakers around the world are
Yeah.
the same price. If you're watching this in Australia, New Zealand, they're going to be pretty similar. The teams that I like is Melbourne at 850. I've got them as some value. Parramatta, I had them rated at 14s and $18. That's 15 on the screen, but they're 18.50 on Betfair at the moment. And a smidge of value. Top sport, I think, was 420 on Penrith. So those are the three teams. I'm very much top end of the market. Steer clear of the ones at the long end. Whilst they can improve, the improvement to go from 15th to make the 8 is not like to actually win the comp. Like say West at the moment, they're around the 50s mark. They could make the 8, finish 7th or 8th. At the start of the final series, they'll still be 50 to 1 to actually win the comp. I don't see any value in backing that now.
Yeah. All right, nice, mate. I might as well throw in a bet for myself. I like the Parramatta Eels. I think what it was 18s. You said. I think that's I think that's quite nice. I do think the Storm are value too, but just have a bit more fun. I'll throw in the Parramatta Eels there. Top 8, mate. I'll get the odds up for you quickly, but I think you like 2 teams here to make the top 8.
Yeah, I like the Sharks. Sharks are around 144. Don't be fooled into thinking that's too short. That's a value play, and it's a great thing if you want to put that in a multi. You're just going to add 40% to whatever else you're backing. Lock them in, and the Smokies, West's around the 450-ish mark, and Newcastle around 6-ish. I think they have the potential to finish in that 6th, 7th, 8th position. Probably not much higher than that, but they have potential to get there.
Yeah, I think there's a few here too. I mean, you could even. I said this to you before. Before we got on, was that I feel like there's a pretty clear gap. I would say that maybe the top 7 sides, like Parramatta, Sharks, Rabbits, Cowboys.
I'll stop at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh yeah, no, 7 teams. Yeah, and then a big gap after that.
I feel like that 7 is like, I'm never going to say a sure thing to make the 8, but I feel like they're at least all below 1.5 to make the 8. You know what I mean? So, I don't know, Parramatta at 173 at Bet365. I think to make the top 8, I mean, they've made the top 8 the last how many years in a row?
That's a huge price, 173. I think I have them rated closer to 145, so that's a huge price.
Exactly. Sharks, like you said, are great. Even the Bunnies are just worrying me. I don't know. I'd say still the Bunnies at 1.4. The only team that I'd probably just be like, no, probably not, would be the Cowboys, just because they all were unbelievable last year, and I feel like they could potentially just all drop off.
I'm in agreement there. Souths and the Cowboys are probably more fair prices.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think like you said, Sharks, and like I said, the Eels. I think they're solid, mate. Let's and then for least wins, or what have we got? Wooden Spooners. Let me see.
Yeah, it's called different across different bookmakers. Least wins, most losses. Some of them might still call it the Wooden Spoon.
I mean, this is
so that's why
not everyone, but
it's listed there because they call it something different.
Yeah. But yeah, we both mentioned that. I think the Dolphins are too short here, and I'd be leaning. I think myself, if I was having a bet, probably the Warriors. But you like the Dragons too, right?
Yeah, I like the Warriors and the Dragons. So yeah, we're both around that, right down that bottom end of the market. I'm not really looking to back any long shots to lose everything. Yes, St George around that 750, I think is very good value, and a smidge of value. The Warriors, there are some 8s around on the Warriors, and the Dolphins probably will get it, but they're screwed down the price already.
Yeah. All right, mate. I'm just happy you didn't mention the Titans, mate. You would have had me. I'm
no rap on the Titans, so they could get there too.
I forgot to throw in the Titans for my top 4 bet too. Bloody hell. All right, mate. In summary, is there anything you wanted to kind of summarize it all? I think one thing I picked up from you just throughout the whole show was kind of, it seemed like you really factor in stability into your pricing. Like I would say that the general, I guess, theme around when a team is, when we're looking at who's going to win the comp or top 8, this kind of thing, people maybe ignore the stability around a team. I feel like everyone's talking about who have they signed, who have they lost, and basing their opinions just off that. Then you never really hear anyone in like the general media saying they've got the exact same team as last year, so I think they'll get better.
Yeah, well, I like the stability on the teams who are already good. Like the Sharks, the Cowboys. You're going to be able to expect the same sort of thing, which was good football and finishing up the top of the table. And I like those. I like backing those sorts of teams early in the year because they're not having to try and figure out combinations. It's the same thing. We have the same coach. We have the same structure. Those early rounds. Those are the teams I like backing, and I like ignoring the teams who have had a lot of changes. The Dolphins, who are obviously a brand new squad. Titans, Newcastle, West, Canterbury. Those teams who have had a lot of changes. That can take a period of time before they're actually as good as they look on paper. Canterbury had a lot of new players last year, and I think they started the season like 1-8 or something. Because you got to adjust. You got to adjust to having all these new players in the team. You don't normally come out firing straight away when you're a new squad. So that's something that punters could look to is the stable teams early in the year and avoid those new those sexy teams that are written up in the media like Canterbury and West with the new players. Because that usually takes some time to gel.
Yeah. Have you had any round one bets yet, or are you?
I haven't. I tend to wait until I see the lineups come out on Tuesday before I have any week one bets.
Yeah. All right, mate. Too easy. Well, I think that finishes up, mate. Any last words on the season?
No, I think we've covered it pretty well. Like, be malleable is probably one of my things. Don't just stick on. I hate when somebody says they get beaten that week. They lost their bet. That's it. I'll never back on the Warriors again. Hate them. Never back them. Never again. That's not the right way to go about gambling. I can easily back a team that lost by 60 1 week and look to back them the following week. If everyone's saying that, they can often be underrated. You've got to be ready to change your opinions and be less emotional when you're betting, and don't stick to that same opinion the whole year.
Yeah,
that would be one of my tips for anyone looking to improve their gambling.
Yeah, I think that's just a general lesson across the board, isn't it? Like if any team loses by 60 the next week, they're probably the value side, which sounds bloody odd to say, but yeah. But yeah, mate, thanks so much for coming on. I really enjoyed picking your brain ahead of the season, and I'm sure all the listeners got something out of that. If you are interested in the NRL, if you guys did like it, reach out to me or Chris on Twitter or wherever you can get a hold of us and let us know, because potentially we could do a week to week or any kind of content throughout the season. We'd be keen to do. Just depends if there's a demand for it, and we can get into it. But overall, thanks everyone for listening. If this is your first time on the podcast, please make sure you do a quick rate and review of the podcast and subscribe to us wherever you're listening. Give it a like on YouTube. That always helps. And get involved. But Chris, mate, thanks so much for coming on. I really enjoyed talking a bit of footy. And if I don't see you before round one, mate, enjoy the start to the season.
No worries. Thanks for having me on, Alex. Anyone follow me on Twitter? I'm DeBomb82. Hit me up in the DMs. Any questions, gambling related, want to get better, rugby league questions, happy to answer them.
Yeah, sorry, mate. I should have shouted out your Twitter handle. I forgot it was such a good one too.
It's such a good one, isn't it? Yeah.
I love it, mate. I'll throw it. I'll throw it in the description too for people who don't know how to spell I'm DeBomb. All right, guys. Catch you later.